Jake had no idea the silver-haired girl he'd just given his lunch to was deciding whether humanity was worth saving, just knew she looked hungry. The campus cafe buzzed with the usual blend of murmured conversations and clattering cups as Jake Torres made his way through the crowd. Spotting a familiar face, he waved at one of his classmates before spotting something that pulled him up short, a pretty foreign exchange student sitting alone by the window, staring down miserably at an empty wallet. The sight tugged sharply on some visceral memory from childhood when someone had offered him their last cookie in what felt like a world full of scarcity. Without hesitation, Jake reached into his backpack and dug out half of today's sandwich. It was his second helping after lunch since he needed to stay alert for the upcoming exams. With a quick glance around at all those nearby, each absorbed by their phones or laptops, walked over to her table and slid the ham and cheese across with an easy smile. "You look hungry," Jake said cheerfully, ignoring how unusual it was that someone would recognize this particular emotion so clearly from such a distance. "It's just ham and cheese, but it's pretty good." The girl stared at him for what felt like minutes before she seemed to blink out of some kind of trance and looked down at the food in front of her. Her silver hair fell over one shoulder as she ran slender fingers through the curls. She met Jake's gaze again with an almost bemused expression, tilting her head slightly as if listening to something only she could hear. "No strings attached?" she asked carefully, after a moment's pause. "That's right," he replied brightly. "Promise." He winked at her and picked up his notebook from the table next door, where he'd set it down for safekeeping while getting the sandwich, then retreated back into the crowd before she could respond with anything more than an odd smile lingering on those perfect lips. Watching as she took a hesitant bite of her unexpected gift, Jake's heart lifted at her expression. It was clear that whatever had been weighing so heavily on this woman just seemed to lighten, however slightly. As he made his way back over to the counter to pick up another cappuccino for the next round of customers, the corners of his mouth tugged upward and stayed there. Empress Zylara Vor'Astrum watched from behind her silver bangs as Jake vanished into the crowd again with an expression she couldn't quite place. A mix of warmth and curiosity tingled through her, curiosity that stemmed less from any kind of hunger for knowledge than it did a genuine desire to understand whether this fleeting moment had been rare or commonplace among humans. She found herself reaching out across space, seeking out the truth in human behavior beyond what she could glean from their casual exchanges. It was no easy feat. The minds of most beings were closed off by natural barriers and deliberate shields, meant for privacy, but also serving to hide secrets and ulterior motives. But Jake Torres' mind felt open somehow, unlike many others who knew they had been speaking with an alien visitor. Zylara narrowed her violet eyes at this discovery, intrigued yet wary. She could feel the weight of expectations pressing down on her shoulders as she considered whether humans were truly capable of empathy and altruism without ulterior motives or hidden agendas. After all, if they couldn't be trusted to show kindness simply because someone needed a trait so crucial for interstellar cooperation, then there might not be much hope left. She took another bite from the sandwich Jake had given her, savoring both its flavor and texture as well as what his gesture implied about human nature. Her stomach rumbled, but this wasn't out of physical need. Rather, it was a deep yearning within her soul for connection that transcended mere sustenance or material wealth. Jake returned to the front counter where he had left his notebook moments earlier. He glanced around to see if anyone needed immediate assist, and said his cheerful disposition made him naturally attuned to spotting patrons who might need help without asking, and noticed a student hovering nervously near one of the pastry displays, clearly torn between wanting something and not having enough money for it. "Hey there," Jake called out cheerfully. "Need some help?" The young woman turned towards him with wide eyes that reminded him oddly of someone else he had recently encountered, but couldn't quite place at this moment. She hesitated a second before nodding, her hand reaching tentatively into her pocket as though searching for something. "Roman too was hoping to get one of those muffins over there," she stammered nervously while pulling out what looked like only enough change for half the cost. "But I don't have quite enough." Jake grinned warmly and motioned towards his backpack behind him. "No problem, let me grab you something from my stash." He turned to dig through it, pulling out a small wrap pastry he'd picked up earlier that day because it looked delicious. Handing this over with another smile, Jake said, "Enjoy." The girl stared at the package in her hands like she wasn't sure if someone was playing an elaborate prank on her, or if there really had just been such simple generosity. Tears welled unexpectedly into her eyes, and she blinked rapidly as though trying to clear them away. "Thank you so much," she whispered, almost reverently. She hugged the little treat close before scurrying off with a final grateful wave that left Jake shaking his head slightly in bemusement, but smiling all the same. Meanwhile, Empress Zylara continued observing her surroundings with keen interest, even as more data filtered through about this particular human named Jake Torres, who had managed to catch her attention. His actions were simple yet profound. They spoke volumes about a society whose foundations she wanted desperately to know and understand, if only because it would dictate whether humanity could be trusted within the galactic sovereignty. She decided then that perhaps rather than trying to deduce all this from afar, she should continue engaging directly with these individuals while maintaining her disguise. Her next steps involved finding ways not just to observe, but also interact more closely and meaningfully with Jake Torres himself. The idea of getting closer made a strange sort of warmth spread through Zylara's chest despite herself. She had spent too long doubting the existence of pure, unselfish motives in others. Now faced with such direct evidence from this world she found so fascinating and perplexing at onset, it was almost impossible not to wonder if perhaps there might still be room for hope after all. With a small sigh that felt both exhilarating and exhausting, Zylara finished her sandwich. Then she stood up, pulling herself away from the cafe window where she'd been perched throughout these observations. Leaning down slightly, Empress Zylara Vor'Astrum scanned Jake's whereabouts among the bustling crowd before finally spotting him near another table, serving coffee with his usual cheerful demeanor intact despite any exhaustion he might be feeling. She made up her mind right then and there she needed to speak with this human aging, perhaps even find herself a companion in the midst of all these strange encounters. Jake was just putting away another round of cups when Empress Zylara Vor'Astrum approached, moving gracefully through the cafe as if every step were choreographed for precision. He noticed her now out of the corner of his eye, a vision among mere mortals, with hair that shimmered like moonlight and eyes whose depths seemed to hold galaxies within them. As he turned around fully to greet another customer's order request, Jake caught sight of those violet orbs focusing on him directly. She had paused mid-step, as though waiting for something important yet uncertain. He felt a strange sense of déjà vu wash over him, but before he could contemplate it further or react otherwise, Zylara spoke. "Jake Torres." Her voice carried an ethereal quality, soft and resonant with authority despite its gentle timbre. "We should talk." The chapter ended here, as Zylara Vor'Astrum's statement left Jake both intrigued yet slightly baffled by the unusual situation unfolding before him. Jake Torres had just put away another round of cups when Empress Zylara Vor'Astrum approached, moving gracefully through the cafe as if every step were choreographed for precision. He noticed her now out of the corner of his eye, a vision among mere mortals, with hair that shimmered like moonlight and eyes whose depths seemed to hold galaxies within them. As he turned around fully to greet another customer's order request, Jake caught sight of those violet orbs focusing on him directly. She had paused mid-step, as though waiting for something important yet uncertain. He felt a strange sense of déjà vu wash over him, but before he could contemplate it further or react otherwise, Zylara spoke. Jake Torres, her voice carried an ethereal quality, soft and resonant with authority despite its gentle timbre. We should talk. Jake blinked in surprise, his hand pausing mid-air as if frozen by the command. Sure, Empress Zylara, what's up? He smiled hesitantly, trying to mask any confusion. Please. She gestured towards a nearby table where he could see another student waiting patiently for their order. Jake nodded and moved over quickly, delivering the coffee with his usual warmth before returning his attention back to her. I need your help, Zylara began once they were alone at an empty corner near the window, looking unusually serious. Of course, Jake's brows furrowed in concern as he pulled up a chair beside hers. What do you need? Zylara took another deep breath before continuing. I have this assignment due soon that I'm struggling with. She flashed him an apologetic smile, but there was something slightly off about it, like she expected him to refuse. Jake's heart softened at the sight of her vulnerable expression. Oh, no problem. What is it? It's rather complicated, Zylara admitted, looking down at her hands as if ashamed. She had been so used to commanding vast armies and empires that asking for help felt almost foreign now, let alone from a mere human. Jake chuckled softly, patting the table with encouragement. I can try my best. Let's see what it is. Zylara reached into her bag and pulled out several sheets of paper covered in dense diagrams and equations clearly beyond Jake's usual expertise based on campus courses he had ever taken. But instead of being intimidated by their complexity, his brow furrowed with concentration, as if each symbol told a story. Your study, ain't advanced mathematics? He asked after scanning through them quickly before nodding towards her reassuringly. I might not be an expert, but I'll see what I can do. Zylara's expression softened into genuine gratitude, something she rarely allowed herself to show in the grand halls of the galactic sovereignty. Thank you. Hey, no worries. Jake waved it off easily before pulling out his own notebook and a pen from his backpack. It started then. Over several hours spent at various locations around campus, a quiet corner of the library, an underused classroom. After hours, Jake explained concepts patiently to Zylara as she scribbled furiously in her notes. He made sure not just to teach but also to ensure understanding by asking questions back and checking for comprehension gaps. I really appreciate this, Zylara murmured one evening while they sat on a bench beneath the university's old oak tree, reviewing their work under street lamplight. Jake shrugged modestly despite his inner satisfaction. I'm glad I could help. Why? She pressed further with an intensity that made him look up sharply from where had been studying her face in profile by lamplight earlier while they worked on complex equations together. He blinked, taken aback for a moment, but then shrugged again and gave her another easy smile. Because it's the right thing to do. I mean, if someone's in trouble or needs help, why wouldn't you want to? Zylara observed him closely as he spoke, noting how naturally this act of kindness flowed from him without any expectation of return. 5 or a stark contrast against all her lifetime's worth of experience dealing with manipulation and politics. "You're not afraid he'll take advantage?" she asked softly. Jake laughed lightly at the thought. "Well, maybe you have a few tricks up your sleeve," he admitted honestly, though his smile showed no real fear, but rather an understanding that this universe was full of wonders beyond what one could imagine from Earth alone. But it wasn't just trickery she had in mind. Zylara wanted to test the depth and purity of Jake's kindness. She decided then to push him further out of sheer curiosity mixed with hope. "What if I acted completely different tomorrow?" "Huh?" Jake frowned, turning to face her fully under the dim light of street lamps. "I mean," she clarified slowly, watching his reaction closely, "let's say instead dim rude and demanding galways late for meetings we set up together, or maybe even just annoying." Jake's forehead creased thoughtfully as he considered her hypothetical scenario. "Well, I'd probably still try to help you out. People make mistakes sometimes or have bad days." He shrugged again dismissively, though there was a genuine empathy in his voice that warmed Zylara's heart unexpectedly. "Even if I act like this every day?" She pushed further, hoping for an answer, but also dreading one. Jake's eyes softened as they locked gazes with hers. "If you're genuinely struggling," he said quietly yet firmly, "I'd try my best to understand why and still offer whatever help I could." Zylara blinked back the unexpected emotional impact of his words before looking away, her gaze shifting towards the distant campus skyline bathed in twilight hues. "What is it about humans that keeps bringing you here?" she asked after a moment's silence, curiosity mixed with vulnerability tinging each word. Jake tilted his head slightly as he pondered. "I guess I just enjoy meeting new people and learning from them." "And everyone deserves kindness," he added simply. "Plus, there's something in your eyes that makes me want to get to know you better." His honesty was like a balm for her weary soul, bringing unexpected warmth into the heart of one who had seen so much darkness elsewhere. "So why are you helping me?" she countered softly, after an appreciative pause. "Surely there's something more than just wanting?" Jake shrugged again easily, but his eyes held sincerity. "Maybe it's because I believe in second chances, and maybe you remind me of someone who once needed a little extra help from people around them," he said quietly. Zylara watched him closely, seeing the unspoken story behind those words that seemed to stretch back beyond just their recent acquaintance or even his university years. There was depth, their pain perhaps mixed with lessons learned, and love regained through kindness extended despite setbacks faced. "Thank you, Jake Torres," she whispered finally, not knowing if it was enough, but feeling deeply grateful all the same for this human who had touched her in ways long forgotten among stars. He smiled at her, a gentle warmth that seemed to light up even under dim street lights. Anytime. The next morning found them both back at their usual spot in the coffee shop where Jake worked part-time shifts after classes. Zylara watched as he moved around with his effortless charm and kindness towards every customer, whether they were regulars or newcomers. "Why do you keep being so nice to me?" she asked suddenly, her voice carrying an earnest curiosity that cut through morning chatter easily, enough for only him to hear clearly over the hum of conversations buzzing around them now. Jake paused mid-cup clean up and turned towards her with a curious but open expression. "I don't know," he admitted honestly. "Maybe because there's no reason not to be." Zylara felt an unexpected pang as she watched his easy smile, a reminder that perhaps genuine connections didn't need elaborate schemes or power dynamics. They just needed people willing to see beyond surface realities towards underlying truths of human kindness. "Thank you," she repeated quietly, feeling more warmth settle inside her chest, than any solar flare could ever muster. I think Kim's starting to understand why humanity might deserve a chance. Jake nodded thoughtfully at her words, as if pondering them deeply, even amidst the buzz around him. Glad we're both learning something here then, he teased gently. Indeed, her smile now genuine and free of cynicism, Zylara felt hope begin to bloom again, a rare feeling among lifetimes spent amid galactic politics and power struggles. Perhaps there's still good in this universe. Their friendship continued growing naturally, over weeks, filled with shared moments and mutual support, despite Jake remaining unaware of her true identity or significance, beyond being just another curious student on campus. Yet, as their bond deepened, Zylara found herself more convinced each day that perhaps humanity could indeed be trusted after Aleph, not through grand gestures, but simple acts of kindness like those she observed daily in this young human named Jake Torres. The chapter ended here, with the revelation beginning to dawn upon both characters about what they had discovered from one another amidst ordinary moments turned extraordinary by genuine connection and mutual respect. The sun was setting on another ordinary day at Jake's campus, a symphony of sounds and scents filling the air, laughter carried by breezes, distant chatter blending harmoniously into ambient melodies of student life. Amidst this vibrant backdrop stood Jake Torres, his worn hoodie barely visible under the fading light. He had just finished his part-time shift in the coffee shop when he noticed Empress Zylara Vor'Astrum sitting at her usual corner table, a book open but unattended on its surface. Jake approached with his customary gentle smile and friendly demeanor. "Hey there," he greeted warmly, without looking up from balancing several cups of steaming beverages that threatened to spill. He set them down carefully before turning back towards Zylara, who watched him intently, her unusual violet eyes reflecting the quiet anticipation inherent in the moment. "Are you about ready?" Jake asked, extending a hand towards an untouched coffee cup still sitting on its saucer. "Or do you need anything else?" Zylara's response was measured and calm, as always, but there was something different, a softness that had begun to take root beneath her usual veneer of aloof detachment. "No, I'm good for now," she replied quietly. Jake nodded understandingly, his expression mirroring the quiet warmth in their interactions over recent weeks. As he turned away to resume his duties elsewhere within the bustling shop, Zylara watched him go with a subtle sense of gratitude and curiosity. Later that evening, after closing time, Jake found himself walking home under starlit skies reflecting on the day's happenings. He carried an extra sandwich in case hunger struck once more by nightfall, a routine habit rather than mere coincidence. As he strolled along familiar paths leading back to his apartment complex, thoughts of Zylara naturally drifted into mind. She was different from anyone else Jake knew or encountered at campus, a unique blend of mystery and approachability that drew him in without ever feeling forced. They had developed an unspoken camaraderie built upon shared moments, understanding glances across crowded hallways, and quiet conversations during breaks between classes. Just then, his path led him past the main gate of his apartment building, where several men dressed in ornate uniforms were stationed. Something unusual indeed for this normally tranquil neighborhood. Jake's curiosity piqued but not full. Why alarmed given their non-threatening posture? They seemed more ceremonial than threatening, despite the obvious power emblems displayed prominently on each man's chest. Curiosity getting the better of him, he approached cautiously and found himself face to face with an imposing figure who immediately straightened to attention, upon seeing Jake's approach. "Good evening," greeted this authoritative voice, calmly yet unmistakably formal in nature. "Is something out of place here amidst his usual surroundings, but not entirely unwelcoming?" Before Jake could ask or react further, several more figures kneeled simultaneously around him, forming a makeshift circle encircling Zylara, who had just entered the scene from another direction. Her disguise was instantly revealed as she turned to face these newly arrived soldiers with an expression of calm authority that sent chills down Jake's spine despite himself. "My Eternal Majesty," one man proclaimed formally, kneeling deeply in reverence, while others followed suit, echoing identical words into hushed whispers. Jake blinked rapidly, his mind struggling to process what he was witnessing. The woman who had been a friendly face amongst his regulars suddenly became something far greater than anyone back home could ever imagine, let alone comprehend the implications thereof. She stood there regally, accepting their greetings with practiced poise, though her eyes met Jake's briefly, holding silent communication amidst the sudden upheaval of reality. "Jake Torres," she began, addressing him directly, as if breaking through some unseen barrier between them, even now when all else around was chaos and revelation simultaneously unfolding before his very eyes. "You gave your sandwich to the ruler of the galaxy." For a moment Jake felt time itself slow down, his brain short-circuiting amidst this surreal turn of events that defied every logic he had ever known in everyday existence until today. Yet within those few moments suspended between shock and comprehension, one thing remained clear even as reality shifted irrevocably around them. "Do you still like ham and cheese?" Jake asked hesitantly yet sincerely, looking back up at her through the haze of disbelief that threatened to cloud his understanding further if he let it consume him utterly. "Because I have another one." Zylara's eyes softened slightly, a rare hint of genuine emotion flitting across her features as she nodded almost imperceptibly. "Yes," she whispered quietly, but with renewed hope flickering visibly behind those galaxy-filled depths now piercing into Jake's very soul. In that moment, everything changed, yet somehow stayed the same. Humanity remained kind, because it chose to be, regardless of cosmic hierarchies or galactic politics, and Zylara saw this truth embodied fully in front of her eyes through one simple act repeated countless times over days, filled with genuine connections forged amidst ordinary moments turned extraordinary by mutual respect and shared kindness. The revelation had come, leaving both Jake and Zylara altered irrevocably from where they stood now under stars that suddenly felt closer than ever before. The universe was vast beyond measure, yet the single connection between them proved far more powerful than any celestial empire could ever dictate alone. Their friendship continued growing naturally through days filled with shared moments of learning, their simple acts of kindness proving perhaps most profound amidst grander schemes and cosmic intentions alike. Jake still offered sandwiches regardless. Zylara found herself increasingly hopeful once again, amongst lifetimes spent navigating galactic politics rife with manipulation and cynicism, only to discover genuine goodness often resides, simplest forms encountered daily, among humanity. The chapter ended here precisely as the plot dictated, setting stage for future revelations while cementing profound truths discovered amidst everyday miracles made possible by extraordinary connections forged through mutual respect and kindness. Jake Torres was back at his job in the campus coffee shop, lost in thought as he prepared lattes and espressos for the morning rush of students. The events of the previous days had left him reeling, But here on Earth, everything felt oddly normal, and yet it wasn't. He still couldn't wrap his head around meeting a galaxy-ruling alien who was now his friend in human form. Zylara Vor'Astrum, disguised as just another student like Jake himself. "Hey Jake," said one of the regulars, Mia from history class, her eyes lighting up with curiosity and excitement that she tried to hide, but couldn't quite manage. Jake looked over at her, smiling warmly. "Good morning, Mia. How's it going?" "I'm great," she replied excitedly, taking a sip of coffee, before continuing. "I heard about some kind of diplomatic visit from another planet." "It sounds crazy. Just keep your daydreams to yourself," Jake joked lightly while secretly wondering if she was on to something. He shook his head, and he moved on to the next customer. The afternoon found Jake's study, in his usual spot by the campus library, sipping a thermos of coffee he made earlier that morning at work. The sun filtered through the windows, casting dappled shadows across the floor as students buzzed about their own studies or group projects. It was then when a sudden chill ran down Jake's spine. An unnatural feeling of dread and foreboding crept over him. He looked around nervously, but saw nothing out of place except for one person, Empress Zylara, sitting quietly in the corner with her book open before her like any other student. But something was off about how still she appeared, unnaturally so. Jake's heart rate spiked as he approached cautiously, unsure what kind of threat could possibly be lurking inside this hallowed academic sanctuary. Jake started hesitantly, but stopped mid-sentence when Zylara raised her head slowly from the book and met his eyes with a piercing intensity that made him swallow hard. There was no need for words. She knew he felt a tooth tension in the air, like an electrical storm waiting to explode. "I am aware," came her soft yet deliberate reply, as if reading his thoughts aloud. "Admiral Kyervos intends to stage a false flag operation." A cold sweat broke out along Jake's brow and palms as realization dawned on him. Kyervos was behind this, trying desperately to tarnish humanity's image in the eyes of galactic society by fabricating aggression against Zylara. The thought chilled him down to his core. Zylara closed her book gently before looking up at Jake once more with a fierce determination that spoke volumes. Without needing words, "He will not succeed." "Can I do anything?" Jake asked, feeling both small and insignificant next to the cosmic power standing beside him, yet desperate for action nonetheless. Zylara seemed surprised by his question, but nodded slowly. "You can be vigilant," she said simply before pausing thoughtfully, before adding softly, with a rare sincerity glowing in her eyes and kind. Later that evening, as Jake walked home through dimly lit streets, under the cool blanket of night sky, he couldn't shake off the ominous feeling gnawing at his gut. His heart pounded in anticipation and fear when an urgent message pinged on his phone from Zylara. "Jake, no," was all she wrote, but it conveyed enough urgency for him to drop everything and head back towards campus immediately, where he found her waiting outside near a quiet spot far removed from prying eyes or potential witnesses. She looked grave, yet composed as usual beneath the cloak of her disguise, only now there were streaks of silver hair glowing faintly with latent energy. "What happened?" Jake blurted out before she could explain further, because seeing Zylara this way made his nerves fray even more than they already had been all day long. "Admiral Kyervos is planning an assault," Zylara began coldly, her eyes narrowing as she described their enemy's plan. "He aims to attack me while I am still in my human form. His goal? To paint you humans as a threat, unworthy of joining our galactic civilization." Jake felt his blood run hot with righteous indignation. "So, what do we do?" "Do nothing," Zylara stated firmly, but her eyes softened when Jake's face fell slightly, at the idea he wouldn't be part of stopping this blatant lie. "I will handle Kervos," she continued gently, placing a hand on his shoulder in unexpected reassurance despite how dangerous such closeness felt given their circumstances. "But if things turn ugly and I am threatened," Jake's expression hardened with resolve, understanding exactly what needed to be done even though it frightened him profoundly. "I won't let anyone hurt you," he declared fiercely, although deep inside tremors of fear began shaking his voice, because this wasn't some game anymore. This was reality colliding brutally against all that Jake ever thought possible or safe within the confines of humanity's small corner of space, time continuum. Zylara nodded solemnly, her hand tightening briefly around his shoulder before releasing him entirely. "Very well," she agreed quietly, but with a steely resolve unmistakable beneath her calm demeanor. The night pressed in darker as they walked back to where Zylara had been attacked at a small alley near campus that seemed innocent enough until it transformed into the scene of some twisted cosmic drama beyond comprehension for anyone else present. As Jake and Zylara reached their destination, a group of shadowy figures suddenly emerged from hidden locations around them. Admiral Kervos himself at their center, flanked by soldiers who appeared almost ghostly under lamplight. "Zyla?" Jake whispered fearfully, but she shook her head sharply, once more taking full control of the situation, as if steeling herself against any hesitation or second guesses in favor of decisive action alone now necessary given current circumstances. "Jake, run!" Zylara commanded immediately yet firmly, instead reaching into a pocket for some sort of small device before pressing it rapidly to activate what appeared akin to an alarm signal, broadcasting their location instantly across greater distances. But Jake didn't move, couldn't tear his eyes away from the confrontation escalating around them as Kervos advanced threateningly, with clear intent written on every line of his menacing body language. Zylara met him head on without fear, but also seemingly unarmed and alone against overwhelming odds stacked heavily in favor of their antagonist. "Foolish Empress," spat Kervos disdainfully, though there was something almost mocking about how he delivered such a harsh insult, as if daring her to prove his assessment wrong by failing spectacularly before him today, amidst this grand display meant solely for others watching from afar, unseen yet present, nonetheless via technological means of communication relayed back home. Zylara's expression didn't waver, but hardened further into something fierce and unyielding, a testament more towards strength forged through centuries rather than any recent spate of events, despite how much they threatened to overwhelm her now in this moment suspended between truth and deception, where humanity itself stood on trial for its very worthiness, judged solely upon actions taken under pressure today. "Stand aside," she warned coldly yet calmly, as if issuing orders, not merely a plea. But Kervos only laughed cruelly before raising his hand signaling attack. In that instant, everything seemed to slow down even further, allowing Jake enough time to see the impending disaster looming large ahead and decide he couldn't let it happen. With no weapons or training at all, he threw himself in front of Zylara regardless, without thinking twice about personal safety, because she was his friend, and there would be nothing stopping him from protecting her now, no matter how impossible that seemed given current reality facing them both together, locked inside this nightmarish cycle born solely out of betrayal against friendship and trust established between two unlikely souls. The impact sent Jake sprawling to the ground, in a painful thud. A sharp cry escaped his lips, even as he felt every muscle protesting under sudden strain wrought by Cuervo's assault. His vision swam dizzyingly for a moment, but clarity returned quickly enough. Zylara was there beside him, moving swiftly despite initial shock, pressing her palm against Jake's back to stabilize him just long enough until she could gather herself fully once more before turning sharply towards their enemy. "Enough!" Zylara roared with power echoing through the alley like thunderous command. Impossible for anyone present here tonight, or witnessing remotely elsewhere across vast distances, not even beginning to fathom true extent of cosmic might, wielded without visible means beside her now, unleashed freely from restraints imposed by human form limitations. Light flared around them, intense and blinding. Cuervo stumbled back as if struck by a physical force, although clearly none existed besides pure willpower manifesting through sheer intensity behind those violet eyes staring down challenge head on with unyielding resolve. Jake gasped heavily, trying to recover from impact, even while struggling against rising panic threatening to overwhelm him entirely now that he had become target instead of protector only moments earlier. Yet Zylara's gaze never wavered between Cuervo's and Jake, her hand hovering protectively over his body, as if willing herself capable, shielding both of them together despite risks involved for doing so directly against superior forces arrayed against their combined resistance tonight, amidst grander schemes designed solely around isolating single individual instead. "Him," Zylara corrected fiercely, emphasizing pronoun with deliberate finality, "is mine to protect." Cuervo's eyes widened in disbelief. No one dared speak such words aloud regarding Empress Vor'Astrum's domain, yet here stood Jake Torres, defying all expectations laid bare before him by mere existence next to galactic ruler, declaring his worth unequivocally through actions taken regardless potential consequences involved. "Jake," Zylara whispered gently, as if reassuring both herself and her friend equally about reality unfolding between them tonight, where truth revealed itself amidst darkness dispelled completely once more, thanks solely because someone believed enough without question necessary, simply trust given freely among friends, unburdened by expectations or obligations otherwise imposed from outside interfering instead pure bond forged amidst ordinary moments turned extraordinary through mutual respect and kindness alone. In that moment everything changed, yet somehow stayed the same. Humanity remained kind because it chose to be, regardless of cosmic hierarchies or galactic politics, and Zylara saw this truth embodied fully in front of her eyes through one simple act repeated countless times over days filled with genuine connections forged amidst everyday miracles made possible by extraordinary connections formed between them, now indelibly linked forevermore within fabric woven together from threads stretched far beyond boundaries imposed solely by constraints limited only to confines, where they stood today, standing shoulder to shoulder, side by side against impossible odds, defeated completely, thanks purely because someone believed enough without question necessary, simply trust given freely among friends, unburdened by expectations or obligations otherwise imposed. As the light faded back into darkness, Cuervo and his soldiers retreated hastily. The alley was quiet once more, though it pulsed with an energy that would forever mark this place in history for those who knew its significance, a testament to what ordinary kindness could achieve against overwhelming odds when backed by extraordinary belief in one another's worth. Zylara helped Jake stand up slowly, her gaze softening further as she brushed some stray hair from his forehead. "Are you all right?" she asked gently, but didn't wait for an answer before moving closer and wrapping him in a rare embrace filled with warmth more profound than any cosmic energy ever could provide alone, despite magnitude wielded through sheer force of will commanded within limits imposed merely by human form, disguising her true essence, now fully revealed amidst grander schemes designed solely around isolating single individual, instead only to find genuine goodness resides, simplest forms encountered daily among humanity, where friendship formed between them, indelibly linked forevermore within fabric woven together from threads stretched far beyond boundaries. Jake nodded, feeling his cheeks warm slightly, but returning the embrace with equal fervor. "I'm fine," he said truthfully, though there was something more underlying beneath surface simplicity. Something about how being here now amidst this impossible situation had brought them closer in ways neither ever imagined possible before today, when reality collided brutally against all that Jake thought imaginable or safe within confines of human perspective alone. "Thank you, Jake Torres," Zylara murmured into his shoulder with an almost imperceptible sigh, releasing pent-up tension carried throughout entire ordeal, yet held back until now fully resolved amidst grander schemes designed solely around isolating single individual, instead only to find genuine goodness resides, simplest forms encountered daily among humanity, where friendship formed between them, indelibly linked forevermore within fabric woven together from threads stretched far beyond boundaries imposed merely by human form, disguising her true essence now fully revealed. In that moment, everything changed, yet somehow stayed the same. Humanity remained kind, because it chose to be, regardless of cosmic hierarchies or galactic politics, and Zylara saw this truth embodied fully in front of her eyes through one simple act repeated countless times over days, filled with genuine connections forged amidst everyday miracles made possible by extraordinary connections formed between them, now indelibly linked forevermore within fabric woven together from threads stretched far beyond boundaries imposed solely by constraints limited only to confines where they stood today, standing shoulder to shoulder, side by side against impossible odds, defeated completely, thanks purely because someone believed enough, without question necessary, simply trust given freely among friends, unburdened by expectations or obligations otherwise imposed. The plot crumbled as the truth shone brightly, illuminating not just their immediate surroundings, but also the broader universe they were now a part of. Jake and Zylara stood together under the stars, ready to face whatever came next with renewed hope and understanding. End of Chapter 4. Jake awoke to an unfamiliar beeping sound and the sterile smell of antiseptic, his head heavy as if he were floating in a sea of cotton candy clouds. Blinking slowly, his vision blurred before focusing on a figure sitting by his bedside, her posture relaxed yet alert. Zylara Vor'Astrum sat there with her legs crossed under the hospital bedside table, one hand resting casually against it while she munched on what looked like half a ham and cheese sandwich. She wore ordinary clothes that fit snugly around her legs and an oversized hoodie that hung off her shoulders, and for once Jake couldn't see any signs of her power or authority. "You're ridiculous," Zylara said with a playful smile when she noticed him staring at the food in her hands. "You're a student. I command armadas." Jake felt his lips twitch upwards despite the dull ache that throbbed through his head and body. "Yeah, but I had the sandwich," he replied softly, still feeling too groggy to muster much enthusiasm. Zylara laughed, a genuine laugh filled with warmth and lightness, and it was so unexpected in this place of cold metal and sterile walls. Jake felt an odd sense of comfort wash over him. It reminded him they were friends now, more than just strangers or subjects and ruler. There was something deeper connecting them beyond the superficial layers. "I should have known," she said with a half shrug as she finished her sandwich and placed it aside on the table next to his bed. "But you're right about one thing, I can't always command what I want in this form." Jake nodded, trying not to let himself sink too deeply into discomfort despite how nice it felt talking to Zylara like a peer instead of an intimidating ruler from another world. The thought made him wonder just how many times he had underestimated her before. "Speaking of commands," Jake said after clearing his throat and forcing out the lingering cobwebs in his mind, "how long have I been out?" Zylara tilted her head slightly to one side as she regarded him with a mix of concern and amusement. She was still dressed like an ordinary student, though somehow even that simple disguise seemed regal against everything else around them. "You've only been unconscious for about 3 days, Zylara said gently, "but we couldn't move you until the doctors released you from their care." Jake's eyes widened as he tried to process this information. 3 whole days? He thought back to what little memory remained of that night when everything went sideways with his classmates' drunken shenanigans. "Why did I end up here?" Jake asked, feeling a mix of confusion and embarrassment about the circumstances leading him into such an unlikely encounter with Zylara. Zylara sighed softly, but there was no judgment in her eyes or tone as she leaned closer to whisper conspiratorially, "Your friend was trying to impress you by showing off some fireworks he had bought illegally. They went wrong, very badly." Jake's heart clenched at the thought of his friends getting hurt because they wanted anything from him. It didn't matter how much he tried, people always seemed to think there were strings attached whenever he helped them. "Did anyone else get injured?" Jake asked, worried about all those other lives affected by that night's recklessness. "No," Zylara replied firmly, though she looked away briefly, as if considering something more serious than mere physical injuries. "They managed to avoid any real harm this time." Jake felt a wave of relief wash over him, and gratitude toward the Empress for her intervention on his behalf. Still, he knew all too well how close they had come. "Thanks," Jake said sincerely, offering Zylara a small smile despite still feeling groggy from exhaustion. "I owe you one again." Zylara waved off the gesture with an easy grin. "Debt is for those who trade favors in exchange for power or control." Her eyes twinkled playfully as she looked back down at him, clearly enjoying this rare moment of normalcy. "Then I guess we're just friends," Jake said softly, after a pause to absorb her words and the weight they carried amidst their unusual circumstances. "Who help each other out." Zylara nodded slowly, with a hint of something deeper in those violet eyes, maybe hope, or possibly an overwhelming sense of wonder at this simple human concept. "You know, I came here expecting, well," she paused, searching for the right words to express what had once been her entire reason behind coming down to Earth disguised as just another student. "I expected everyone would try and impress me or ask favors because they knew who you were." Jake chuckled softly despite his lingering soreness. He felt genuinely happy that he hadn't turned out like Thathan, if it meant disappointing Zylara in ways she wasn't expecting. "And now?" Jake asked curiously, trying to gauge where this revelation left them both. "I'm not sure what I expected," Zylara admitted quietly with a small smile playing at her lips as she leaned back against the hospital bed's headrest. "But you've shown me that there are still good people out there who will do things because they want to, rather than expecting something in return. Jake felt warmth flood through him as he realized how much this meant to Zylara, how rare and precious it was for her to feel genuine connection amidst all the layers of deception and political maneuvering she encountered daily. "Glad I could help," Jake replied earnestly with a grin stretching from ear to ear. "Weird that someone like me gets to do something like this." Zylara shook her head slowly, reaching out gently to place one hand over his forearm where it rested on the bed sheets. Her touch was warm and reassuring despite any otherworldliness she might possess. "No," Zylara said softly, but with certainty in her voice like a cosmic truth being spoken for all time across galaxies far beyond their immediate reality. "You're not weird at all, Jake Torres." The sound of the hospital room's door opening broke them out of that quiet moment where worlds had been linked together by such simple acts of kindness and mutual respect between two beings from entirely different walks of life. Jake turned his head towards the noise, just in time to see one of their fellow students, Emily, a friendly face among many, heaving herself into the room with her usual flurry of movement despite carrying only what looked like an extra set of clothes for him. She was always so busy helping others. It seemed she never stopped moving, except perhaps briefly while sleeping. "Hey Jake," Emily said cheerfully, as she crossed over to his side without missing a beat, giving Zylara the one silver with curiosity, but no discernible recognition before turning back fully toward her friend in recovery mode post-accident. "How you doin'?" Jake laughed softly at seeing one of their most reliable friends, even now being herself amidst this chaotic situation. "I'm okay," Jake assured Emily warmly, while nodding gratefully towards Zylara, who simply offered him a rare smile before turning to greet another student with her usual calm demeanor and regal presence, satisfied having shed all trappings that would have identified them as something greater than human flesh or blood could ever convey alone. "I heard you took quite the tumble," Emily added teasingly, but then softened when she saw Jake's wry grin in response. "But at least we didn't lose one of our best students because someone decided to go wild with fireworks." Zylara stepped back slightly while keeping an eye on both Jake and this new arrival, taking a moment to observe how naturally Emily moved about the room, even here amidst clinical sterility that otherwise felt so foreign against all they knew from day-to-day campus life outside these walls. "You know," Zylara said softly, but still loud enough for everyone in earshot, their voice cutting through any casual chatter with an almost imperceptible authority behind it, "if you ever need help or advice, I'll always be here." Jake looked up at her sharply as Emily paused mid-sentence to glance between them, before going back to helping Jake get settled again after his unexpected hospital stay. "Thanks," Jake said sincerely, but didn't offer anything more than a nod, because he knew there would come a time when those words might mean something different entirely, when their fates intertwined in ways neither could have imagined initially, despite whatever small glimmers of possibility had been sparked here today, against all odds stacked so heavily against any such thing ever happening. Zylara merely smiled softly back at him before turning to Emily with polite warmth that belied the complexities she carried within her own heart and mind, ready always for another day's challenges, while leaving behind just enough mystery about who exactly they had encountered in this moment together beneath hospital lights reflecting off silver-white hair like a galaxy swirling into infinity. As Jake settled back against his pillow amidst Emily's continued care, he found himself lost once more within thoughts spinning out across galaxies far beyond their reach at present. Yet here and now felt real and tangible, something to hold on to as both an anchor and a guiding light through whatever came next for them together. "You know," Jake said softly, after a moment of silence broken only by the steady beep of monitors keeping track of his recovery progress, "if I hadn't given you that sandwich, who knows where we'd be?" Zylara's violet eyes held all sorts of stories and mysteries within their depths, but today she simply looked back with sincerity shining through whatever veils still remained between them. "Exactly," Zylara replied quietly while reaching out to grasp Jake's hand, in a gesture so simple yet somehow profound amidst everything else happening around them. "Sometimes it's the smallest things that make all the difference." And as those words hung heavy within their shared space, filled with significance no hospital staff could ever understand or hope to replicate through mundane care and recovery protocols alone, Jake knew this was just another beginning for him and Zylara, amidst whatever adventures awaited them together. For in this moment, under sterile lights reflecting off galaxy-scaled mysteries hiding behind ordinary appearances, they had forged a connection beyond anything Jake might have imagined possible before their paths crossed so unexpectedly within familiar campus grounds one fateful day. And that thought alone felt like the greatest adventure yet to come, no matter where it led them next amidst stars and galaxies stretching endlessly out from Earth's humble confines. A&D of Chapter 5. Jake had no idea that his simple act of kindness was about to change everything, not just for him, but for an entire planet and its place in the universe. 3 weeks after Jake's hospital stay, he found himself walking towards the campus coffee shop with a familiar sense of routine. Today felt like any other day. Studies were piling up, finals loomed on the horizon, and his part-time job at the coffee shop was becoming increasingly busy as semester end approached. But why wasn't just another day? It marked something significant for both Jake and Zylara. She had decided that this would be her last day in human guise before returning to make a final decision about humanity's place within galactic civilization. For days, Shed watched from the shadows of her disguised existence as humans rushed through their lives without much consideration for others beyond fleeting moments of kindness or self-interest. However, every encounter Jake and Zylara shared over those weeks had been different. Their chance meetings on campus, his willingness to listen when they spoke about random topics like favorite books or films, even the quiet conversations by her hospital bedside, all these small interactions held a deeper meaning for both of them than mere pleasantries. Morning arrived, and Jake found himself waiting outside the coffee shop as usual. The cool autumn air was crisp against his skin, but it only sharpened his senses to notice something different about today's atmosphere. Students milled around hurriedly with final papers clutched in their hands. Professors looked tired yet determined. As he stepped inside, Zylara stood near the counter waiting for her order, her silver hair pulled back into a neat braid, and she wore glasses that hid much of what made her unique beneath an ordinary facade. She glanced over at him with a small nod, acknowledging his presence without breaking eye contact with the barista who served them. The interaction was brief but meaningful. It reminded Jake how much had changed in such little time despite everything appearing normal from the outside. After receiving their drinks and snacks, Zylara's usual tea paired with one of those pre-packaged sandwiches she seemed to prefer, they found a bench near an old oak tree on campus where they often sat together now. "Hey," Jake greeted softly, setting down his bag next to him before sitting beside Zylara. "Another busy day?" She nodded slightly while unwrapping her sandwich wrapper carefully before taking the first bite thoughtfully. "Yes, exams are coming up soon." There was an unspoken understanding between them as they fell into silence for a moment, both aware that today might be special in ways neither wanted to acknowledge aloud yet. Later, after Jake had settled back into his studies and Zylara had disappeared amidst the throng of students rushing towards their final exams, she found herself standing outside the grand hall at her home planet's capital city. The grandeur around her was overwhelming, a symbol of power, where representatives from all corners of known space gathered to discuss matters affecting entire civilizations. But today, this place held a singular importance for Zylara as she stood before the Galactic Council. Each member seated in their floating thrones radiated an aura of ancient wisdom and might. They were guardians of peace across countless galaxies. Yet now their attention was directed entirely towards her. "Supreme Empress," one spoke formally, "you have returned from your mission." Zylara nodded respectfully before addressing them with the weight of truth behind each word. "I came here as a student to observe humanity's true nature, without diplomatic pretenses guiding my observations. They tried impressing me or leveraging influence whenever they realized who I truly was." A hushed silence filled the room, tension palpable in every corner. However, she continued with quiet conviction that resonated deeply within her listeners despite its calm delivery. There were moments when all expectations vanished amidst genuine connections formed simply because someone cared about another person, not their position or potential worthiness as a civilization. As she paused momentarily to allow the gravity of those words sink in among council members whose faces held various expressions ranging from surprise to contemplation, Zylara turned towards Jake's figure, still present nearby, a reminder of simplicity amidst complexity. "I was hungry. A human boy with nothing gave me his only food." Her voice took on a softer tone despite its firmness. "I was in danger. He threw himself in front of weapons for me because I was his friend." A ripple ran through the gathered assembly as they processed these insights, reflecting fundamental values often overshadowed amidst grander cosmic decisions. "If this is humanity, we are lucky to have them," Zylara concluded softly but powerfully. "Their worthiness isn't measured by technology or might. It lies in their ability to see beyond superficial differences and connect on a human level." Back at the coffee shop, unaware of the monumental decision being made thousands of light years away, Jake was engrossed once more in his studies when Emily approached him with news. "Jake," she said hesitantly yet excitedly, "you've got to see this." She led him through crowded hallways until they reached a large screen displaying a live feed from Zylara's planet, where the Galactic Council had convened that very day for an announcement of utmost importance regarding Earth's potential integration into their civilization. Jake watched in stunned silence as images flickered across the screen showing the Empress delivering her report, their words echoing through every fiber of his being. He felt a warmth spreading within him at seeing how much impact something small could have when done genuinely and without expectation. The moment Zylara concluded, an official spokesperson stepped forward to make the formal announcement. By decree of the galactic sovereignty, they began clearly into their comm systems, broadcasting far beyond borders known. Earth is hereby welcomed as a full member state. We extend our hand in alliance with humanity based on mutual respect and understanding fostered through genuine connections formed across boundaries. Cheers erupted from both Jake's location, among friends celebrating together amidst campus grounds, to celebratory gatherings occurring across Earth itself. Later, back by the oak tree where they often sat, Zylara found herself once more beside Dakithi's time in her true form. The radiant beauty of starlight surrounding her seemed almost mundane compared to the impact made through simple acts like sharing a sandwich or lending an ear during troubled times. "You know," she said softly while reaching for half of his ham and cheese offering with playful consideration despite having access to any food imaginable, "if I can have anything from across galaxies, this is still pretty good." Jake unwrapped another portion without hesitation. "Yeah, but it really is." And in that moment shared between them under ordinary circumstances, transformed by extraordinary insights, both Jake and Zylara knew unequivocally that something beautiful had begun far beyond what either could have imagined possible initially. And though many adventures awaited them within the vast expanse of galaxies stretching endlessly outward from Earth's humble confines, here they remained anchored amidst familiar surroundings reflecting endless potential for both wonderment and discovery together amidst stars yet to be explored fully. Earth is welcomed into the sovereignty. New opportunities await Jake as an ambassador or advisor bridging human civilization with galactic allies. Yet he asks only one thing: to finish his degree first, and perhaps continue sharing sandwiches on their campus bench, where friendships transcend cosmic boundaries and simplicity reigns supreme amidst grandeur of universal connections forged through genuine kindnesses shared across infinite reaches beyond imagination. And so their journey continuous, not just as individuals navigating life's twists and turns, but collectively as humanity, embracing its place among stars waiting to welcome them home.